Step out of the car right now. I can smell the dope in here.
Okay, my hands are right here. There's nothing illegal in this car.
Don't play with me.
I said out.
Keep those hands where I can see them.
Officer, for everybody's safety, you should call your supervisor.
You hiding something? What do you got under the seat,
I ain't reaching for anything. Just get your sergeant
Last chance, man.
Call him.
On the night of October 14th, 2024, at exactly 11:22 p.m., Officer Cole Sterling of the Oak Ridge Police Department made a decision that would effectively terminate his career in less than 20 minutes. Sterling was just 3 months out of the academy, a legacy hire whose father had served as chief of police in the neighboring county. Despite a training record flagged for impulsivity and authoritarian tendencies, Sterling was patrolling the streets of suburban Ohio with a badge and a chip on his shoulder. He didn't know that the man sitting in the 2022 silver Honda Accord was Marcus Reed. To the local PD, Reed was a ghost. In reality, he was a senior special agent with the DEA, currently serving as the primary undercover lead on a 6-month multi-agency task force. At the time of this stop, Officer Colton had already been the subject of 2 internal memos regarding pretextual stops. His department's policy clearly stated that scent of marijuana was no longer sufficient probable cause for a warrantless search in this jurisdiction. But Cole Sterling felt he was above the policy. He wanted a big bust to secure his spot on the K-9 unit. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, should a rookie officer be allowed to patrol alone before their first year is up? And if you believe in holding bad actors in uniform accountable, hit that subscribe button now. We're going deep into the evidence that the department tried to bury. According to the official incident report filed later that night, which was heavily redacted before our investigators obtained the original, Sterling claimed the suspect was combative and displayed signs of drug-induced paranoia. However, the secondary audio recording from the cruiser's dash system paints a different picture. It captures the sound of a young man who thinks he's in a movie, and a professional who knows he's watching a train wreck in slow motion. The situation moved from a routine traffic stop to a constitutional violation the moment Sterling ignored the supervisor request. According to the Oak Ridge Police Manual, Section 4.12, if a driver requests a supervisor and the officer cannot articulate an immediate physical threat, the officer is encouraged to de-escalate. Sterling did the opposite. The audio records Sterling's breathing becoming heavy, a sign of an adrenaline spike. He yanks the door open. You can hear the mechanical click of the handcuffs being readied. You're being detained for suspicion of possession with intent to distribute, Sterling shouts. Marcus Reed remains remarkably calm. Officer, I'm telling you one last time. Check my credentials in the glove box. If you blow my cover right now, you aren't just losing your job. You're endangering a federal operation. Sterling's response was a sneer that was later cited in his termination hearing. Federal operation? You've been watching too much TV, pal. You're a street-level dealer, and I'm the guy who's taking you off the board. What Sterling didn't realize was that his body camera was broadcasting a live feedback to the precinct's dispatch center. The dispatcher on duty, Sarah Jenkins, later testified that she felt a pit in her stomach because she recognized Marcus Reed. She had seen him in a briefing 2 weeks prior. She tried to radio Sterling to stand down and return to the cruiser for a priority patch, but Sterling had turned his radio volume down to focus on the arrest. The investigative file shows that at 11:29 p.m., Sterling forced Reed onto the hood of the car. At this moment, the rookie officer was seconds away from opening a trunk that contained not drugs, but highly sensitive surveillance equipment and a GPS-linked evidence locker belonging to the United States government. Cole Sterling thought he was about to be the hero of the department. He thought he was about to land the biggest drug bust in Oak Ridge history. He was so blinded by his own ego that he missed the 3 black SUVs that had just turned the corner, lights off, moving fast toward his position. Do you think this sin of drugs is too often used as an excuse for illegal searches? Let me know your thoughts on pretextual stops below. At 11:31 p.m., the quiet suburban street of Oak Ridge became the epicenter of a jurisdictional nightmare. Officer Cole Sterling had Marcus Reed pinned against the hood of the Honda, one handcuff ratcheted tightly around Reed's right wrist. According to the deposition of dispatcher Sarah Jenkins, she was screaming into the radio for Sterling to acknowledge her. Sterling, 2 to 14, abort the contact. 2 to 14, do you copy? Stand down immediately. But Sterling had completely ignored his comms. He was too busy playing detective. In the Internal Affairs report, It was revealed that Sterling had actually unclipped his body camera and set it on the roof of the car to get a better angle of the search he was about to perform. He wanted to make sure his big win was captured for the department's highlight reel. You see this. Sterling can be heard saying on the recording, gesturing toward the trunk, "This is where your life ends, Reed. I've been watching you since you hit the county line." This was a blatant lie. GPS data from Sterling's cruiser later proved he had only been behind Reed for 45 seconds. The complexity of this case lies in the documents the Oak Ridge PD tried to keep under wraps. We obtained a series of internal emails sent just 3 days prior to this incident. Sterling's field training officer, FTO, Sergeant Miller, had written to the captain. Officer Colton continues to show a lack of regard for the Fourth Amendment. He treats every minor infraction as a felony in progress. If he isn't reined in, he's going to cost this city a fortune in civil litigation. He isn't looking for crime. He's looking for a fight. The captain's response? He's got spirit. Let him work. That spirit was currently violating the civil rights of a federal agent. As Sterling reached for the trunk release, Marcus Reed didn't struggle. He didn't yell. He simply looked into the lens of the camera on the roof and said, "Time's up." Suddenly, the street was flooded with high-intensity LEDs. 3 blacked-out SUVs screeched to a halt, boxing in Sterling's cruiser. 6 men in tactical gear with police/DEA emblazoned across their chests bailed out, weapons at the low ready. If you were Marcus Reed, pinned to a car by a rogue rookie while your team watched, would you be able to stay this calm? Drop a yes or a no in the comments. This is exactly how deep cover professionals are trained to handle the unthinkable. The lead agent on the scene was Special Agent Anthony Cardona. His sworn statement in the subsequent federal civil rights lawsuit describes the scene with clinical coldness. Upon arrival, I observed a local officer, later identified as Cole Sterling, in the process of an unauthorized search of a protected federal asset vehicle. Officer Colton appeared disoriented and refused to immediately de-escalate, even after federal identification was presented. He maintained physical control over Agent Reed for an additional 90 seconds despite being ordered to release him by superior officers. Sterling didn't just fail to de-escalate, he doubled down. The audio captures Sterling screaming at the feds, "Get back. This is my scene. I have a suspected drug trafficker in custody." Agent Cardona's voice is a sharp contrast, deadly quiet. "Son, the only person going into custody tonight is the one who doesn't lower that weapon and release my agent. You are interfering with a Tier 1 federal narcotics investigation. You are currently the biggest threat to public safety on this block." While the confrontation was happening on the street, the Oak Ridge Police Department was already in damage control mode. Logs from the station show that the chief of police was woken up at 11:40 p.m. Instead of calling the DEA to apologize, his first phone call was to the city attorney. We reviewed the internal communication logs from that hour. One memo from the chief to the shift supervisor read, "Make sure Sterling's body cam footage is flagged as evidence in ongoing investigation immediately. Do not release to the media. If the DEA asks for the raw file, tell them it's being processed for a local assault charge against the driver." They were going to try and frame the DEA agent for resisting arrest to justify Sterling's initial stop. They didn't realize the DEA had their own high-definition surveillance running from a drone overhead the entire time. Quick question for you guys. When a local department tries to cover up for one of their own against federal agents, who should have the final say in the punishment? The mayor or a federal judge? Let me know your thoughts below. Sterling finally released Reed's arm, but he still hadn't grasped the gravity of his situation. He actually tried to argue with Agent Cardona about the smell of marijuana. "I know what I smelled," Sterling insisted, his voice cracking. "He's got a masking agent in there. You guys are letting a criminal go because of some federal paperwork." Reed, now free and adjusting his jacket, finally spoke. "Officer Colton, I told you to call your supervisor. Now, I'm calling mine. And mine happens to be the assistant U.S. attorney." The rookie's face went pale. The smell of drugs he was so sure of, it wasn't drugs. It was the scent of a career evaporating in real time. But the worst was yet to come. Because when the feds finally opened that trunk, the one Sterling was so desperate to get into, they found something that would prove Sterling hadn't just made a mistake. He had a motive. The atmosphere on the street shifted from tense to clinical. Agent Cardona didn't waste time arguing. He walked past a stunned Officer Colton and opened the trunk of the silver Honda Accord. Sterling stood there, chest puffed out, expecting a mountain of illicit substances to justify his aggression. Instead, the trunk contained a single, high-grade Pelican case and a nondescript gym bag. But it was what was under the false floor of the trunk that changed the trajectory of the entire night. When Cardona pulled back the liner, he revealed a sophisticated, encrypted mobile relay station, equipment used to intercept encrypted communications from the local cartel the DEA had been tracking for months. But next to the equipment was a stack of surveillance photos. As Agent Reed stood up, rubbing the red welts on his wrist where the cuffs had been, he pulled one of the photos out. He walked over to Sterling and held it up. The photo showed a man in a dark hoodie meeting with a known local distributor behind a strip mall. The man in the hoodie was unmistakable. Officer Cole Sterling. This wasn't just a bad stop. It was an attempted hit on an investigation. The DEA hadn't just been tracking the cartel. They had been tracking the leak in the Oak Ridge Police Department. "You weren't smelling drugs, Tyler," Agent Reed said, his voice dropping to a whisper that the body cam, still sitting on the roof, captured perfectly. "You were smelling your own fear. You recognized this car from the briefings you weren't supposed to see. You wanted to find out how much we knew. You wanted to see if we had the logs." Sterling's bravado vanished instantly. The rookie mistake narrative was dead. This was now a federal obstruction of justice and public corruption case. The moment the realization hit, Sterling's training, or lack thereof, failed him completely. He reached for his radio, likely to call his father, the former chief, but Agent Cardona stepped into his personal space. "Don't touch that radio," Cardona commanded. "As of 11:42 p.m., you are being stripped of your police powers under Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code. You have deprived a federal officer of his civil rights under color of law, and you did so to protect a criminal enterprise." In an instant, the local police department lost control of the scene. Usually, an officer-involved incident is handled by the state's Bureau of Criminal Investigation. But because Sterling had targeted a federal agent on active duty, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, was automatically triggered to take the lead. Within 10 minutes, a second wave of vehicles arrived, this time black sedans with government plates. The FBI agents didn't talk to the Oak Ridge officers. They began seizing everything: Sterling's cruiser, his personal cell phone, and most importantly, the body camera he had foolishly placed on the roof. "We obtained a quote from the FBI's preliminary field report. Officer Colton's attempts to bypass department protocols were not born of ignorance, but of a desperate need to compromise Special Agent Reed's surveillance data. The scent of marijuana was a fabricated pretext to gain access to encrypted federal hardware. While the feds were bagging evidence, Sterling's father, retired Chief Harold Sterling, pulled up to the scene in a personal vehicle, screaming at the officers to let him through. He thought he could pull the same strings he had used for 30 years to get his son out of trouble. But when he saw the DEA tactical team and the FBI agents processing his son's cruiser as a crime scene, the elder Sterling stopped dead in his tracks. He didn't approach. He didn't yell. He turned his car around and drove away. He knew that against the federal government, a local legacy meant absolutely nothing. The legacy was over. The career was dead. And for Cole Sterling, the nightmare was just beginning. Can you believe the audacity of a rookie trying to shake down a federal agent to cover his own tracks? Do you think the department's leadership should be held criminally liable for ignoring the warnings about him? Let's hear in the comments. Sterling wasn't taken to the Oak Ridge precinct. He was placed in the back of a federal transport vehicle and driven straight to the nearest U.S. Marshals holding facility. But the story doesn't end with his arrest. In Act 4, we're diving into the court transcripts and the blue wall of silence that crumbled the moment the DEA started subpoenaing the Oak Ridge PD's internal servers. We're going to see exactly what happened when the cartel realized their inside man was about to flip to save his own skin. By 8 a.m. the following morning, the Oak Ridge Police Department was no longer a place of business. It was a crime scene. While Cole Sterling sat in a federal holding cell, FBI agents were seen carrying boxes of hard drives and personnel files out of the precinct. The blue wall of silence, the unwritten rule that officers protect their own, didn't just crack, it shattered. Once the rank-and-file officers realized that Sterling wasn't just a bad rookie, but a federal target who had endangered the entire community. The tips started flowing in. We reviewed the sworn deposition of Officer Sarah Jenkins, the dispatcher who had tried to warn Sterling. Under oath, she stated, it wasn't just that night. There had been rumors for weeks that Sterling was living way beyond his means. He was driving a customized truck that cost more than his annual salary. We all knew something was wrong, but management told us to mind our own business because of who his father was. During the emergency bond hearing, the prosecution presented evidence that turned the wrongful arrest into a massive corruption scandal. This scent of drugs Sterling claimed to have smelled was systematically debunked by a forensics expert. Expert witness Dr. Elena Sterling, no relation, testified. We analyzed the air filtration logs from Agent Reed's vehicle and the dashcam audio. There was zero evidence of any illicit substances. In fact, Officer Colton's own body cam, which he placed on the roof, captured him taking a small glass vial out of his pocket and holding it near his own nose just seconds before he made the claim. He was priming himself to lie. The prosecution also revealed that the vulnerable victim in this case wasn't just Agent Reed, but the entire city. Because Sterling had compromised a Tier 1 investigation, 3 major cartel distributors were tipped off and fled the jurisdiction before they could be apprehended. The financial damage to the federal operation was estimated at over $2.4 million. The consequences didn't stop at Cole Sterling. Because the captain and the chief had ignored the written warnings from Sergeant Miller in Act 2, the city's insurance carrier immediately revoked their liability coverage. In a move that stunned the community, the mayor announced the administrative dissolution of the Oak Ridge police leadership. Official statement from the mayor's office. Trust is the currency of policing. Cole Sterling and the leadership that enabled him have declared bankruptcy on that trust. Effective immediately, the chief of police and 2 supervising captains are terminated for gross negligence and official misconduct. Do you think the supervisors who ignored the warnings should face prison time alongside Sterling? Or is losing their career enough? Type prison or fired in the comments below. While the criminal case moved forward, Marcus Reed filed a landmark civil rights lawsuit. But he didn't just sue the city. He sued Cole Sterling personally. Under a rare legal maneuver, because Sterling had acted outside the scope of his duties by attempting to protect a criminal enterprise, his qualified immunity was stripped. This meant his personal assets, and the inheritance his father had set aside, were now on the table. Court documents show that Sterling's legal team attempted to argue that he was young and overeager. The federal judge's response was biting. This was not the overeagerness of a rookie. It was the calculated aggression of a criminal wearing a badge. You didn't make a mistake, Mr. Sterling. You made a choice. And now, the law will make its choice. Sterling's personal life imploded in a matter of days. His wife filed for divorce, and his father, the former chief, was subpoenaed to testify against his own son regarding the source of the unexplained wealth found in their shared family accounts. But there is one final piece of evidence that the DEA held back until the very end. A recording from inside the transport van after Sterling's arrest. It contains a confession that no one, not even the FBI, expected to hear. The final nail in Cole Sterling's coffin didn't come from a witness or a forensic lab. It came from the back of the federal transport van on the night of his arrest. Unbeknownst to Sterling, federal transport vehicles are equipped with high-fidelity environmental microphones designed to capture spontaneous utterances. As Sterling sat alone in the back, the audio recorded him sobbing, followed by a frantic, whispered phone call he thought was private. He had managed to hide a secondary burner phone in his tactical vest. They got the car, Sterling whispered into the phone. They have the logs. You need to clear the warehouse now. They know everything. He wasn't calling his father. He was calling the very cartel leaders he was supposed to be policing. That 30-second recording transformed his charges from civil rights violations to conspiracy to distribute controlled substances and racketeering, RICO. 6 months later, the federal courthouse was packed. Cole Sterling, once the golden boy of Oak Ridge, sat at the defense table looking frail, stripped of his uniform and his pride. The judge didn't hold back. For the civil rights violations, the obstruction of a federal investigation, and the conspiracy charges, Cole Sterling was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. But the ultimate irony came during his placement. Because Sterling had spent his short career acting as a tough on crime officer while secretly aiding a cartel, he was a marked man. For his own safety, the Bureau of Prisons had to place him in a high-security administrative facility, the same type of facility where many of the people he had rightfully arrested were serving their own time. The Oak Ridge Police Department, as the community knew it, ceased to exist. The state moved in and placed the entire municipality under a consent decree. Every single arrest made by Cole Sterling during his 3-month tenure was reviewed. 42 cases were overturned and dismissed due to his history of fabricating the scent of drugs. As for Marcus Reed, he received a formal commendation from the Attorney General. However, the incident ended his undercover career. His face was now known to every criminal organization in the region. Reed transitioned into a new role, head of the DEA's Internal Integrity Unit. He now spends his days traveling the country, teaching rookies exactly what happens when you let ego and corruption override the badge. The badge is a shield to protect the people, Reed stated in a final interview with our investigative team. The moment you use it as a weapon to protect yourself, you aren't a cop anymore. You're just a criminal with a head start. Cole Sterling's story is a chilling reminder of how much damage a single person can do when they are given power without accountability. It took 20 minutes on a dark roadside to destroy a career, a department, and a family legacy. What do you think is the most effective way to prevent Sterling-type officers from entering the force? Should psychological evaluations be more rigorous, or should legacy hiring be banned entirely? If you believe that no one, no matter their father's name or the color of their uniform, is above the law, then share this story. Let it serve as a warning and a precedent. Thank you for watching this investigation. For more stories of accountability and the truth behind the thin blue line, make sure to like and subscribe. Justice is a long road, but we're walking it together.